Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Shootaround. I am the only host of this podcast, Rudy Saint-Claire, and joining me abnormally to my real life left is the one and only Rusty Buckets, and joining me to my digital right is the legendary AlexHoops. Fellas, did we enjoy our Thanksgiving break?
I'd say so, yeah. Doesn't sound like Jacob did.
Jacob, a big turkey eater?
No, not even a little bit.
Turkey in general is... everyone's eating Thanksgiving dinner for the sides. No one's eating Thanksgiving dinner for the turkey. The turkey's just like, you have to have it. No one really looks forward to the turkey.
Yeah, no, I was recently compiling some of my favorite NBA moments from the season, and very near the top of the list is LaMelo Ball listing his favorite things for Thanksgiving, which is just kind of everything.
Yeah, I love how truly unfiltered he was through that. It's like he felt like he was just talking to a buddy. And I respect that level of disinterest in PR.
If anything, it elevated his image, you know? He's playing 4D chess with his profanity latent Thanksgiving.
Yeah, like being actually genuine like that endears people to you. Like I liked him more after that than if he would have just said, I don't know, fucking turkey.
I just think between that and the Magic players eating the turkey on the floor, pretty eventful NBA Thanksgiving. But aside from that, really, there's been a lot of good basketball, primarily from the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are maybe the best team in the NBA right now.
The season has been amazing, man.
I predicted the Timberwolves would be really good last year. I was totally wrong. I went on a Timberwolves podcast probably 15 months ago and said, man, with their whole Twin Towers thing that they got going on there, I think Rudy balances the yin to Cat's yang. And I was not right immediately, but I am right now. They're looking like a 60-win team. Congratulations, Alex. I know that's your favorite team. So happy for you, bud.
They're not my favorite team.
It could have fooled me.
Yeah, you keep telling yourself
that. What are you talking about?
The big surprise for me with the Timberwolves is that Karl Anthony Towns is like good and like it's working, because that was the thing that we had been talking about, especially early on in this season, of just like, you know, this team looks very good, but Cat's kind of the odd man out. But especially ever since I posted a video suggesting such, things immediately fell through, and he just started averaging like 28 on crazy efficiency and playing better defense than ever.
The weird thing about Karl Anthony Towns is that his play is based directly off of the input from your video, nothing else. No other reason he's playing good.
I saved his career single-handedly.
He's made like a couple of comments where he's basically just been like, yeah, I'm not the guy anymore. And like, I'm cool with that. And good for him. And he's played like the best basketball of his career in terms of like impacting winning. Mm-hmm. Now that he's recognized that.
Yeah, embracing your role is very important.
And that's not to say like he couldn't in a different time, under different circumstances, maybe Karl Anthony Towns can be like the guy for your team. But under these circumstances, it wasn't going to work like that. And I think it's important that he recognized that. And of course, like, wow, shocker. Timberwolves are really good now.
I don't know if there's a world, even Cat at his absolute best, where he could be like number one guy on a very good team. But I think his skill set is built pretty well to be a guy that people play off of, and like, you know, having a offensive big with that versatility as a guy setting screens and stuff, that's basically heaven if he's actually hitting those shots. Some of really the bigger question for Cat was not necessarily the outside shooting, but like literally everything else. The post-ups got worse over the years, and I think Noah in our group chat pointed out that he has like awful technique whenever he drives to the rim. But as of late, almost all of those things have improved. And he's also, I think, embraced the outside shooting aspect of his game more than ever.
Yeah, he's attempting 5 threes a game. The only season he's attempted that volume, higher than that volume on that efficiency, was back in 2020. He shot 7.9 threes a game and 41% from three. This year he's shooting 5 threes a game on 41.1%. So
yeah, it was a short. I believe it was a 30-something game sample in 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
Half the season, pretty much, because that was a short ways.
I'm curious what his 3-point rate was like for like what his field goal attempts was versus 3-point attempts. Because I feel like his field goal attempts are down. I could be wrong though.
Not by like a significant amount relative to his career average. It's like less than a 0.4 field goal attempt difference.
Well then, fuck me.
Aside from Karl Anthony Towns, though, I mean, there's really no reason that the Timberwolves shouldn't be this good other than them being the Timberwolves, you know, like a little bit of a cursed franchise, historically had a little bit of bad luck, definitely never getting the media attention that they deserve. But with their 3 bigs and Naz Reid, Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, and then their next 3 best players are defensive stud Jaden McDaniels, Mike Conley, and Anthony Edwards. Like, the pieces are there. All they need is a coach that's not inept, and Chris Finch seems to not be a totally inept coach. So Timberwolves,
high praise.
I mean, I think we're really underselling Chris Finch here.
Look, I'm
He's
not
done a fantastic job.
Tell me more about Chris Finch's fantastic job, because it's hard for me to articulate whether or not a coach is more than just good, neutral, or bad.
I think the point you were trying to make is that in the NBA, coaching is not as important necessarily as it is in other sports and in other levels and other leagues. So, like, oftentimes it feels like the coach is just either getting in the way or not. The very good coaches are less, that actually super help you win are less common. But I think Chris Finch is a pretty excellent coach.
So I know we've had this conversation before about like how important coaching is in the NBA. And I've actually swung in a very different direction from you, where I think coaching is unbelievably important in the NBA.
Well, like, it's not so much.
Even relative to other sports, I think coaching is.
It's not so
important.
much that I think it's not important. I mean, it's obviously important to some degree, but just that, I don't know. It feels like part of this could just be that coaches don't really get the chance to establish themselves in the NBA anymore. Like, as soon as you're hired, you're immediately on the hot seat if things are not going excellent right out of the gate. So that could be a big factor in it. But it also seems like actually excellent coaches are not that easy to run into, especially because when you're dealing with, I mean, I guess this happens in all professional leagues, but actual adults is a lot different than having the power that coaches do in college and high school levels.
Yeah, I think just in the NBA, it's a lot of it is a lot of teams have very good players, but if you don't know how to use those players, like, it baffles me how many good players are on even the worst teams. Like, look at the Pistons, who we're going to talk about. Like, the Pistons technically have good players, but they're playing the bad ones, and they're not putting the good ones in positions to succeed. And it's like, wow, they're terrible. But on paper, like, they're worse than they were last year, but their team is pretty much the same. And in theory, these players should have gotten better.
Yeah, I would say from internal improvement, the Pistons should be better than they were last year. I didn't expect them to make like a playoff leap, because I know some people projected that onto them going into this season. But I didn't expect them to be complete dog shit. That's for sure. When they beat the Chicago Bulls, and obviously it's the Chicago Bulls, so factor that in. But in that game, they looked like by far and away a way better team than them, and they moved the ball super well. Duran and Cade both had really good games. Their role players played their roles well. But since then, it's like they had that moment, and a lot of people on Twitter when that game happened was like, hey, the Pistons, something could be happening here. And then I don't think they've won a game since.
No. I've been watching The Last Dance with my partner recently, and the day after our first binge session, I happened to mention how the Pistons didn't win a game all of November, and they said, yeah, they need to start beating them up again. Just referring to the bad boy Pistons. I'm like, you know what? That'd probably do better than
if you can't space the floor, you're going to have to start punching folks.
Yeah, Jordan rules the whole NBA, you know?
So here's something fun that I've been thinking about. Monty Williams right now, he is on a 6-year, $78,500,000 contract. That's an average annual value of $13 million a year.
That's a lot for a coach, if I'm not mistaken.
He is here's some of the players that, on average per year, Monty Williams is making more money than. Right now, he's making more money than Paolo Banchero. He's on a rookie contract. Wendell Carter Jr., Bobby Portis, Rob Williams, Cade Cunningham, Chet Holmgren, Scoot Henderson, Anthony Edwards, Gabe Vincent, Maxi Kleba, Zubac,
making less than $13 million.
Jalen Green, Jabari Smith Jr. And I know these are rookie contracts, but like they gave a coach more than the best player on their team.
Yeah,
Monty Williams is making more money per year than Cade Cunningham.
I would think everybody except for Bogdanovich on that team is making less money than Monty Williams.
Yeah, you'd probably be right.
I think
he's making more money than Alec Burks too. I'm not saying that like these players should be making more money than Monty Williams. It's just insane to me that the Pistons are paying their coach more money than multiple players on their team.
Yeah, from what I understand, behind the scenes is that Detroit's owner was the one who was super adamant about Monty Williams, and I can't remember what's the name of the Pistons GM that everyone is hating on now. Troy Weaver. Troy Weaver wanted a different coach, so we can't really pin this one on him. But they made sure they got Monty Williams. Like, good God. That's so much money for a head coach.
The owner of the Pistons,
Alex Caruso as well.
As in like the pizza man? Mr. Little Caesars?
I have no idea. All I know is that guy has always like undermined his GM historically, because Nick has complained about it over and over and over again.
Yeah, shout out to Nick.
Yeah.
He's back on YouTube now.
Yes, he is.
You love to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Truly. But Pistons not winning all of November. The Grizzlies did manage to win a game in November, at least a couple.
You do realize that that's not like impressive, right?
It is, considering our team consists of 2 borderline all-stars and a bunch of G League players. Honestly, I mean, getting the one win at home against the Jazz without Lauri Markkanen was really nice.
I guess Desmond Bane could be classified as a borderline all-star. I guess that's fair.
He's putting up
for sure.
25, 7, and 7.
I was just a little thrown by that, just because for some reason I was thinking of either all-star already or not, but he obviously has not been. I mean, he's definitely.
I would not consider
Jaren
Jackson Jr. an all-star as of right now.
Personally. He has been before, right? At least,
yeah, he was last year. I'm just saying this year so far, I would not. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't even have him.
I mean, I don't think Bane is either. I don't think you get an all-star when your team's that bad.
Right, but Bane. I'm saying Bane has way more of a case. Jaren Jackson Jr. he's been pretty stinky.
He's had some stinkers, but he made that one post on Instagram citing like the avatar imagery where like his eyes glowing and his like arrow on his head is glowing. He's like, this is what I'm about to be on. And sure enough, his games after that have been awesome. Ever since Marcus Smart said that we're fucking embarrassing on the bench so loud that like the media got a hold of it. Molly Morrison tweets.
Yeah.
You know who has been awesome?
Been less embarrassing. Who's that?
Santi Aldama has been killing it lately. Over the last 6 games. Let's go last 5. I meant to go last 5, not last 6. Over the last 5 games, he's averaging 14 points. He's shooting 47.5% from the field, 6 rebounds. He's been like he looks like a starter caliber player.
Mhm.
The 3-point efficiency is still like, we'll see what happens with it, but everything else, it's like, oh, he's a real guy.
Yeah, personally, I'd like to see him inserted in the starting lineup at the 3 because although he's massive, he really has more of a wings game.
I agree.
A lot of silky finishing, not a lot of banging down low. So if we could just maximize his size as a 3, whether it be behind Marcus Smart or ahead of Marcus Smart, with Marcus Smart kind of being the key figure on the bench, I think that we could be way better than just like a play-in team. I think we're right back to where we're supposed to be if we can unlock Santi's potential. Definitely compensate for the losses of Dylan Brooks.
Are you talking about this team post Ja returning?
Of course. This team doesn't exist until Ja returns. This is just like a weird limbo that we're in.
Uh-huh.
I see a lot of doubt on your face, Alex.
I'm going to be honest, dude. You guys might be able to sneak into the playoffs, but it's going to take a pretty impressive effort.
Yeah, you're going to have
I'll eat my word if I'm wrong.
You're going to have to be really good for the rest of the year to make up for the hole you dug yourself into. Yeah. Like, if the season started with Ja, this would have been a 60-plus win season type win percentage from there.
Yeah. You guys are playing at a 22 win pace right now.
Yeah, that's really, really brutal. And you still, how many games left until December 19th, which is, I believe, when he returns?
I think it's like 8 or 9 games.
That's tough, man. You got to win a lot of those. Hopefully the turnaround, since they've won 2 straight, means that's actually going to happen. But
first winning streak of the season. Who says it's going to stop, you know?
That's really sad.
Somebody in the comments said, you guys breaking it to Rudy that the Grizzlies aren't making it is like telling a kid that Santa isn't real.
It's true. But I still want to believe, so I do.
I think it's plausible.
I think it's more plausible.
It's not impossible at all.
Likely is where you're showing your fandom there. The Western Conference is brutal.
Yeah, I mean, even the Timberwolves are good now, you know, so I get it.
Yeah, it's more of a testament to how good the West is. This, to me, is probably the most competitive Western Conference we've seen in a really long time.
Yeah, the last time I can think of it was anything comparable to this is like when the Mellows Nuggets were the 8th seed with 50 wins.
Yeah,
that's the last time it's anything close to this.
I think the 3-headed monster of Isaiah Thomas, Eric Bledsoe, and Goran Dragic in Phoenix won 50 games and missed the playoffs.
I think they won 48.
40, yeah, they won.
That's
48
insane.
Games in the playoffs.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, classic NBA team, the Goran Dragic Suns.
Mm-hmm.
In a weird way, yes.
But before we make any more progress, I do want to acknowledge the absence of an episode last week and the absence of an audio episode in a couple weeks, primarily because the IRL pod we did prior to Thanksgiving had so many technical difficulties. I personally just judged it not worth posting on strictly audio platforms. So if you're listening at home and you want to go home and watch that, by all means do, but there are audio issues. But yeah, aside from that, trying to clean up the little hiccups like that on the pod. We were supposed to go live yesterday, but my laptop decided that it's not going to output audio to anything but speakers, and Jacob couldn't log into the streaming app.
It held me. It would not let me in no matter what I did. It was really pissing me off.
The turmoils of this podcast are not to be underestimated, but we will overcome and be the #1 podcast on earth.
All right. So
I unfortunately feel like technical difficulties are becoming part of the charm of this podcast, which I personally can't stand that, but maybe it's like a little bit endearing to everyone else. I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah.
It just reminds them that we're just guys. We're just dudes.
Well, here's the thing.
No other podcast has
we are fighting through. The universe does not want this podcast to happen, but we are making it happen in spite of that. So you should be proud of us, if anything. Is my
maybe. I don't know. Probably not.
Behavior pulling off this podcast. Basically.
I meant the people, not you. Your pride is.
No, I'm saying I know you're talking about the people.
But shout out to the 130 we got in the chat right now, especially choosing to watch us instead of the the championship Saturday college football games.
Yeah, what is it? The MAC championships on right now? You're not missing anything, I promise. It's like Toledo and some other school that I have no idea.
Yeah.
You're not missing anything.
Yeah. But I guess moving on from the Western Conference, we got anything in the East that's interesting other than the Pistons sucking? What's on the docket?
I mean, the Magic are the 2nd seed.
Oh, yeah.
Dude.
Magic.
I didn't know they were the 2nd seed. I knew they were winning a lot. That's
longest win streak in the NBA.
God
Paolo
damn
and
it, man.
Franz both regularly putting up 30, and Jalen Suggs is apparently good.
This is really heartbreaking for me because I'm watching so many pieces that are foundational to Orlando's success that were supposed to be Chicago Bulls. Meanwhile, the team that we traded all those young players for to be competitive right now has 6 fucking wins. It's like we traded the future for the present, but 2 years later, the future is kicking the present's ass.
Here's an interesting question. And I don't know how comfortable you guys feel answering it, but I'll throw it out there. True or false?
I'm compelled.
Jalen Suggs right now has more of a case for Defensive Player of the Year than Marcus Smart did the year that he won it. True or false?
Frankly, I need to catch a few more Magic games, but he has been great from what I have seen for sure. And I also have claimed time and time again that Marcus Smart has the most fraudulent Defensive Player of the Year award since I can remember. So that said, sure, I'll give it to him.
Yeah, I mean, my impression of the Marcus Smart DPOY is that
they just didn't fucking know. No one actually spent the time to consider DPOY. Like, it genuinely felt when the list of the top 3 candidates came out, it was just like someone threw shit at the wall.
All 100 voters were like, fuck, I don't know.
Yeah, and then even then of the final 3, I thought Marcus Smart was the worst option of the final 3 that they gave.
But my headcanon about the Marcus Smart DPOY is that the Celtics kind of won DPOY because the defense was phenomenal.
Yeah, except that's not what the history books will say. They will say that Marcus Smart won DPOY. I'm straight up like against guards winning that award, period. Like, I think the Defensive Player of the Year goes to the most impactful defender in the league, and that is never going to be a guard.
So should
it never
Offensive
will.
Player of the Year in the NFL just always go to a quarterback?
Probably. I don't know.
If a guard is more exceptional than every other guard, then might as well acknowledge the guard's greatness.
Maybe we should do a defensive player of each position, but the best defender in the NBA has never been a guard. Never.
I would be open
won it in the past.
I would be open to like a defensive front court player of the year and a defensive backcourt player of the year.
Sure. Yeah, that's
like
not
that.
a bad idea. Like, I think wings,
Gary Payton Award.
there are wings who have been the best defensive player in the league. Like, they ultimately have the size and the versatility. But like, if you're a guard, even if you're Marcus Smart, who's really good at defending players bigger than you, you're just not. I don't even think he was the best defensive player on his team that year.
That's what I was trying to get at, is that like the Celtics kind of won it overall. And part of it was because the narrative kind of favored Marcus Smart just a little bit. Because
there was a concerted effort.
Marcus Smart came back, their defense went from like bad to excellent. But also at the same time Marcus Smart came back, more or less, Rob Williams also came back, who's another cornerstone defensive player for that team. And so really you could have given it to either of them.
And
but Marcus
in
Smart
my opinion, Rob Williams should have won it.
Yes, Rob Williams was a center, which impacts defense more.
Yeah, Rob Williams was an absolute monster defense. Yeah. I have a video on it way back from that season on my channel.
Sure,
I'd be interested to go back and watch that, but he was a beast on defense.
I understand, like, if you scale it to like I would say, like, when Michael Jordan won Defensive Player of the Year, he was probably the best defender in the NBA relative to his position. Like, he was as good at defense as you could conceivably be as a shooting guard. But was not the most impactful defensive player in the NBA. Michael Jordan was not better defensively than Hakeem Olajuwon in 1988.
Yeah. I've seen some folks in the chat have mentioned Gary Payton. I think Gary Payton is
Even
also
Gary
one of the
Payton.
exceptions. I mean, yes, you can argue that he shouldn't have won it, but I also am not going to say that like it was fraudulent.
Well,
I think Marcus Smart's you can
the
kind of
Marcus
be.
Smart one's much worse.
I feel like Gary Payton had more of a case when he won it than Marcus Smart did.
Like, I think Gary and Michael are the best defensive point guard and shooting guard of all time. So I think that's more fair. Marcus Smart is not the best defensive guard of all time at either position.
So if I'm not mistaken, right now the Thunder, if they're not number one in defense or at least top 5, are you giving Chet Holmgren the Defensive Player of the Year over Jalen?
Oh, let's start the narrative.
So
DPOY
this actually is a good
segue.
Before. This is a good segue into what I want to talk about. Let's take a look at the top. We'll say top 5 in estimated plus minus, which you guys know. And if you're a longtime viewer of the show, you guys know I don't care much for like all-in-one advanced stats, but I feel like EPM is one that typically is fairly accurate in a lot of ways.
The value of an advanced stat like that, if you put that stat through and you're getting like all of the best players in the NBA are the best in this stat, there's probably some legitimacy to that stat.
Right. So with that being said, let's look at the top. We'll say the top 10 in EPM right now. Number 1, Nikola Jokic. That passes the smell test pretty easily.
Yes. Yeah.
Number 2, Joel Embiid. Also passes the smell test. He's been amazing this year. Number 3, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That one, he's been amazing.
Up on that might be.
It's a little bit higher than I would have expected, but top 10 I would have expected from him.
Yeah.
Number 4, Tyrese Halliburton. I think that passes the smell test.
Better than Ja.
I've come around on that. We could talk about that at a different time. But number 5, Chet Holmgren.
Wow. Yeah.
According to EPM, Chet Holmgren is a top 5 player right now. I am a Thunder fan. I wouldn't say that. But
yeah,
I personally think it is really hard to argue a whole lot of players over Chet Holmgren for like an all-star appearance this year.
Yeah, you could definitely convince me he's a top 25 player in the NBA.
Yeah, easily. I think that's not a stretch.
And honestly, if anything, a couple of players on OKC this year have been like marginally disappointing or just like not really improving all that much. Really, I feel like Lou Dort's the only guy who's like jumped up significantly in terms of the quality of his production, mostly in part because he's dialed back what he's done, which is what we've always wanted to see.
Lou Dort and Dylan Brooks fix their games.
Right. But then ultimately, I think Chet is the real difference maker between OKC being OKC last year and being OKC now. Like, he, on both ends of the floor, makes them so much better and does it so seamlessly. Like, everything fits. It's so well orchestrated. He fits so well on offense. It complements everybody's skill set. It's just he's just brilliant, man.
It's funny because, like, to me, the biggest criticism that you can make about Chet so far is that sometimes he is too hesitant to shoot it.
Yeah.
Which is wild that, like, he's a 50-40-90 player right now.
Isn't he still shooting 50% from 3 right now? He's a 50-50-90 player right now.
Yeah, I'm actually curious now that you mentioned that. He's 50-40-87 right now.
Yeah, that's pretty fucking close. I do think that he should shoot like maybe even double the amount of threes that he is. That's really the only thing that I would give him, is that he especially like pump fakes on shots, and I'm like, dude, you can just go up with that.
Yeah. I'm curious because I've noticed over the last like 5 or 6 games, I feel like he's been seeking his own shot in the mid-range a lot more. But on the season, he's shooting 50%.
AD.
He's shooting 50% in the mid range.
That's really good.
Insane. That's really good.
Yeah.
The Kevin Durant comparisons kind of are like
being that good from mid range as a rookie center is fucking bananas.
Well, we gotta remember he's not a real rookie.
Oh, okay.
Just stop. Just stop.
I'm not doing that. I really don't give a shit.
I
I
don't
don't even
validate
care
that
a little
argument
bit.
with airtime on
Give
the
him
pod.
give him DPOY, but give Wembanyama the rookie of the year. You know.
If you win DPOY as a rookie, you are also rookie of the year, unless you just have some outlier offensive player. But Chet is also a better offensive player than Wemby right now. I think more so situationally, I think Chet's a better 3-point shooter regardless of context. But also the Spurs, as I've pointed out, piss me the fuck off with how they utilize Wemby.
Also, I want to say something about Wemby, and I don't have a problem with him taking threes and just like experimenting with his role and trying like basically whatever he wants, because I think that's great for his development. Just like have that freedom, see what you can get away with, and then they'll fine tune your role over the years. That being said, I think one of the bigger criticisms you can make about Wemby is that he takes too many threes.
Yeah, I think
That man loves threes.
Chet and Wemby need to trade their 3-point attempts. Chet needs Wemby's 3-point attempts, and Wemby needs Chet's 3-point attempts. Get a cool 3.5 up per game, Wemby. We're good with that. But like straight up, like in part, I again think that's the Spurs not doing anything correctly in regards to how Wemby is utilized. Like the game where he had 38 points. I hoped that would be like an eye-opening thing for them of just like throw the ball vaguely at the rim. He has a 20-foot wingspan. No one else is going to get it. He's going to lay it up, and he's going to get at least 10 easy points per game just off of that alone. But they stopped fucking doing it after that one game. They maybe do it once or twice a game, and it's truly baffling to me.
Spurs have this one action. It's basically what you're talking about. I wouldn't even call it a play. It's more like something that just happens periodically throughout the game, where they do exactly what you're asking, where it's like throw the ball in the slight direction of the rim, and then Wemby's just going to catch and immediately lay it in. Oftentimes, the immediacy of that lay-in is so quick that it looks like an alley-oop where he doesn't jump.
Yeah.
Like he's probably done that 20 times this season.
That's the thing that I pointed out specifically about that game is that his ability to get the ball and it's immediately in the rim, like he makes the move so fast. Like it's not just that he's tall, it's that he's remarkably coordinated with that height and length.
I'm starting to get a little tinfoil hat with the Spurs here.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like that the whole we're trying to make Jeremy Sohan a point guard and like we're going to make baffling personnel decisions. I feel like they're just tanking. Like this is about as blatant of tanking as you can get, which is fine. I mean, if you want to tank, but
this doesn't
also
feel
don't
like
expect me to like believe that you're actually trying to make Jeremy Sohan your point guard. Like
from what I understand about this upcoming draft, everyone that I have ever heard talk about it has been like, this draft's all right. It's not an exceptional one. There's not some like genuinely even close to generational prospect available. And I feel like if there I've always feel like if you get a player that can be as good as I think Wemby can be right now in the right context, I think you don't waste time. Like I think so many teams take for granted, especially given this era where players leave teams pretty easily. They take for granted how little time you actually have to convince that guy to stay past their rookie extension. And I say the moment you've got that guy, try to win now. I think overall building through the draft is a little bit overrated. Obviously, it'd be cool if they got Isaiah Collier, or I know there's some 5 who's a big deal, like something Sarr. I don't know much about the draft, obviously.
Sarr, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't even know if he's being mocked as like a top 5 pick anymore, but yeah, your point stands. Yeah,
right. I think it'd be really cool I mean, I did this in my Spurs series. I think it'd be really cool just for the Spurs to draft another 7-foot big man, just to be like comically large in the backcourt or front court. But yeah, either way, it pisses me off how they're playing Wemby. That's the main point. I get a little bit the like idea of letting him just figure it out within a nothing offense in terms of like creating his own shot and all of that. But I don't know. It's just disastrous efficiency from him. And it's also like, even if Wemby is a good shot creator in the future, I don't think that's going to be his primary offensive skill set. I don't think, like, I know he's done like Kevin Durant-esque things, but I don't think Wemby, when he's at his peak, is just going to be, we're giving him the ball and he's taking it at the top of the key and he's going to put up a mid-range shot. I just don't think that's how it's going to work.
Yeah, I agree.
Don't mind me. I'm checking the chat, making sure no one gave us any money.
Don't worry, they didn't.
They didn't. I've been watching. Don't worry.
Appreciate the surveillance.
Unscripted Wemby thing, but now let's talk about the Bucks. Yeah, the Bucks. They lost to the Bulls.
Frauds, right?
Yes.
Dame no good anymore. Giannis, not the best player in the world. Brook Lopez can't do anything but shoot threes, apparently.
Where's this coming from? You're going a little hard. I think people take for granted, like, just because your record's good doesn't mean everything necessarily. Because as you've pointed out, like, the net rating for this team is not great. They keep barely scraping by in games where they should be blowing their opponent out. And it's like, yeah, ultimately they have a pretty positive record, one of the best records in the NBA, but they also don't look like they would last a second in a series versus the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, they would get eaten alive with this defense. Right. They would get chewed apart by the Celtics. And that's not like, some people think I'm a I get comments whenever I make a Celtics video. People will be like, "Are you a Celtics fan?" I'm like, "No, the Celtics are just really good, and it's hard to have like a ton of negative things to say about them."
Don't they have like the best half-court offense basically ever?
They have. So there's a stat. I don't know if you're referring to the stat that I mentioned in my video, but their starting five right now has the fourth best half-court offense of the last decade. Like, it's insane. They're on par with, like, not just the 2016 Golden State Warriors, but also like the Kevin Durant Golden State Warriors. Like, they're that good. Wow. It's insane. This team is a well-oiled machine. And the fact that this is turning into a Celtics segment, but I'm going to do it anyways. The fact that they're so good that their starting lineup is incredible. And then, like, their bench weighs them down like a fairly significant amount. Granted, they've had injuries and whatnot, and have been experimenting with some different guys in the lineup. The fact that their overall net rating as a team and their overall half-court offensive numbers are still as good as they are, despite the fact that, like, they've had bench players that have played well, but in general, they're doing this as, like, their starters are just so overwhelmingly good that it really doesn't matter that much how good your bench plays, because the starters are going to obliterate anyone in front of them regardless.
Yeah, I think Kristaps Porzingis kind of unlocked the offense, because just his role within everything just almost guarantees a great shot every possession. And this, I think, the quality of looks that they're getting so easily is, like, hopefully, at least, knock on wood, going to knock out the inconsistency that has always plagued the Boston Celtics. The problem for them always is they'll just have like a 7-minute stretch in the game where their offense is atrocious and they lose the game because of that stretch. But I haven't seen that happen in any game that I've watched from them. Even the Hornets one, I think they were just kind of bad from the onset outside of Jason Tatum. But in general, they're pretty much kicking ass all the time.
Yeah. And I talked about this in the video that I just did on the Celtics, but if you look at their frequency of 3-point attempts this year, like they're attempting a ton of threes, and then the rest are like, it's mostly threes, shots at the rim, and the amount of mid ranges are very, very low. Like the amount of mid ranges they're taking is among the lowest in the NBA right now. And
I imagine their percentage is super good on it because they have a lot of guys that are great at it. So it's like even when you are taking a mid-range shot, it's probably pretty efficient.
Right. Efficiency across the board generally has not been an issue for them. And one thing I mentioned in the video is that a lot of people conflate like offenses being designed to take a bunch of threes and shots at the rim, like they're actively seeking out those shots. And with the Celtics, at least, other teams you can say that, like if you look at the Houston Rockets from back in the day, this was an amazing team, but their offense was designed to generate shots at the rim and shots from three, just tons and tons of spread pick and roll stuff like that. But the Celtics, they're not generating a ton of shots at the rim in three, like necessarily by design. It's just because their offense is so good that it is naturally generating what people consider high percentage looks. It's not that they're actively seeking those out. It's the fact that the way they're executing just inherently leads to those kinds of shots, which to me is a more promising sign for them going forward than an offense that is like kind of forcing the issue. The Celtics sometimes definitely force the issue, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're forcing the issue this season.
Yeah.
Back to Milwaukee.
Dude got in his bag.
Interesting thing about Milwaukee to me is that despite how mid they've been in terms of their net rating, there is a promising aspect of their season so far, and it comes with kind of a caveat. Their offensive rating in the half court this year has been spectacular.
Yeah.
As a half court offense, they've been the third best in the league, behind Indiana, who is currently like statistically the greatest offense ever. I don't know if they still are, but to start the season, they were statistically the greatest offense ever. But Milwaukee is not far behind them in the half court, at least at 103.3 points per 100 possessions in the half court, which if you don't know, that's very, very much above league average. However, defensively in the half court, they are giving up 98.5 points per 100 possessions, which
that's brutal.
Isn't good.
That's brutal. That's crazy, man. I don't understand it because, like, obviously we all anticipated that the defense would be worse trading Drew Holiday for Damian Lillard. That's a no-brainer. However, the one thing about defense in the NBA is that regardless of how big three-point shooting is, the goal is always to get to the rim. You know, the spacing and the era of three-point shooting, one of the many reasons that made offense more efficient wasn't just because teams were, three is more than two, but also because it spread the floor and made more ground to cover to protect the basket, making it easier to get to the rim. So I kind of lost my train of thought. The point, I remember what it was. Okay, sorry. The point is, if you can protect the basket, you're still probably going to be a pretty good defense, even if your perimeter defense is not great. Now, that can bite you in the ass in the postseason, but at least in terms of regular season success, I would think Brook Lopez and Giannis as your defensive players who can protect the basket, you would still ultimately be a positive defense. And I feel like they have to be dropping the ball in some degree because, like, I understand, like, they're having to work a little bit harder because guys are getting blown by a lot easier than they used to be. But ultimately, that's got to be points in the paint that they're fucking up, because that's where I would think they would at least ultimately be a positive defense.
So to me, it's like they've just been really mid. Like their net rating, they've just been mid. Like they're the efficiency that they're allowing at the rim, like, isn't bad. It's around league average. Like, they're giving up 65% at the rim, which league average is 65% at the rim. they're not giving up like an overwhelmingly like amazing efficiency from three. They're giving up 36.9% from three a game, which is literally 0.1 away from league average. It's like their offense is really good, but their defense is just mediocre, and it's dragging mediocre to bad. It's like the ceiling for their defense is mediocre and the floor is bad.
I'm curious what the paint attempts like per game looks like versus last year.
Yeah, because giving away Drew Holiday theoretically means like more of an open lane to the basket. You know, whether you're running into Brook Lopez or not, the point of Drew Holiday is to prevent him from getting to the paint.
Yeah, like you're ultimately giving up more paint attempts, at least I would think, and that's what it looks like based on the eye test. But you've got the stats, so
I mean, it's about the same. It's like a 1% difference, but
really,
I think you know.
He's getting cooked from mid-range. At this point, I'm just, how is this even bad?
I mean, defensively last year at the rim, they were obviously better. And I think schematically on the defensive end, they're still, you know, trying to accomplish the same thing, like funnel teams towards Giannis and Brook down low. But whereas last year you had Drew Holiday chasing guys off the 3-point line, coming off of screens. Now you have like Damian Lillard and Malik Beasley. So like Giannis and Brook are
Beasley, the lockdown defender, apparently.
Right. we touched on this before, where like last year, Brook and Giannis didn't have to make up for as many mistakes because it was Drew Holiday in the backcourt, and then now it's like, you know, they have to cover for Malik Beasley and Damian Lillard a lot more, and I think that's kind of where the difference lies.
It feels a lot like, if you want to just like oversimplify it and kind of ignore the schematics of it all, just treat these as like pure values, you know. When you remove Drew Holiday, that downgrades your defense a little bit, right? So
take
that into consideration. And then everyone was saying going into the season that they could easily imagine a world where Brook Lopez takes a step back. He's pretty old, not the most mobile to begin with. When he does lose what little mobility he does have, he's going to be even less good of a defensive player. So if you're losing Drew and Brook is taking a step back, you're pretty much depending on Giannis to either elevate his game or to at least stay the same and to be just kind of mediocre instead of good. I've seen Giannis step up a lot on defense this season. He did a lot in that Bulls game, got a huge clutch block at the end, and was playing pretty solid defense, flying all over the place all game as far as I remember. And I feel like on the timeline, I'm seeing a lot of Giannis highlights more so than I would in November last year.
You know what I would chalk it up to? I think Giannis should be able to dial back his offense to put more of his energy onto the defensive end of the floor. However, Damian Lillard has not been very good. And every time I'm watching a Bucks game, it's like, okay, Giannis is scoring all of their points. Giannis is doing everything to make sure that they're still winning the game because Damian Lillard decided to put up 12 tonight. So, you know, offense and defense correlate pretty directly. And if Damian Lillard was Damian Lillard instead of whatever the fuck he's been this season, that would probably beget better defense.
I can't help but think that, you know, although Giannis, I was joking earlier saying he's obviously not the best player in the world anymore. If Nikola Jokic wasn't like just freaking God out there, then it would still be the conversation between Giannis or Jokic is the best player.
I mean, Giannis is the best player. This version of Giannis is the best player in the NBA in most seasons of the NBA. Just Jokic is ridiculous.
But will that be enough to elevate them to contention status where they have been for several years now? Or are they kind of in that Clippers territory, like that Lob City Clippers territory where, yeah, they're really fucking good, but we know they're not winning shit?
I think talent-wise, they're higher up there towards the top than the Lob City Clippers is the example. But I would say if I'm predicting what happens with Milwaukee, I think they lose this year to the Celtics, and then hopefully they have an off season where they get some like low value in terms of contract, like not paying a lot of, but like getting good point of attack defenders that you can get on the cheap.
A Jalen Noel.
Is Jalen Noel a good point of attack defender? Because
listen, I got bad news. I see a lot of Grizzlies fans and I say this as apparently a Timberwolves fan. You guys think that's my number one team now. And apparently a lot of the chat does too. Jalen Noel, you guys enjoy it while it lasts, because that dude is the definition of streaky. And I love Jalen Noel. He was a really fun player to watch, but the lows are very, very, very low, and he will shoot you out of games. And you'll literally want to pull your hair out. You're just going to sit there and be like, who does he think he is?
Yeah.
Oh,
I believe it. I believe it 100%. There's been a lot of people trying to be like, okay, when we lose these hardship exceptions, who's the odd man out? Some people are saying Kenny Lofton because that's just like the easiest one. But the upside is still there with Kenny, Love Jr.
You keep saying that, but that's not true. You keep saying
everyone, in the Grizzlies world, except for haters, has been saying that Kenny Lofton is the truth. In
and some fan base, fan base has delusion.
I would rather either waive LaRavia or combine LaRavia with Conchar to move on from their contracts in order to keep Noel as like the 12th, 13th man as like an option if we do find ourselves.
Here's a comparison for you. Is Jalen Noel the Sean Kilpatrick of the modern NBA?
That's a deep cut.
Gosh.
Is that Brooklyn Nets legend?
Brooklyn Nets legend, Bulls legend. He played like 5 games and averaged like 20 points per game for the Bulls at the end of the season.
Maybe he's more like a Wayne Selden Jr.
Nah, Wayne Selden doesn't shoot enough.
All right, here's a much more interesting discussion before we get into the Q&As and whatever.
You don't want to talk Noel versus Kilpatrick?
Yeah, I'm going to segue us out of this pretty quick. I'm going to list some teams, and I just want you guys to say whether or not you think they're contenders or not. Like true contenders, genuine true contenders. And I'll put money on them. There is a commonality between all of these teams, and I'll explain what it is after we go through each team.
Oh, we got a game.
So, number one, and these are in no order. These are just based on the teams that fit my criteria. There is no order, I promise. Number one, Denver.
Yeah,
100%.
I agree. Number two, Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number three, OKC.
For sure.
You consider them true contenders this year?
On equal footing with those two, personally. Their net rating is great. Offensive rating is great. Defensive rating is great. And it's been getting better throughout the year.
I'm going to go no, personally.
Okay. So, does anyone want to guess what the consistency between those three teams is?
Nope.
Top 3 in net rating?
A consistent sign of a true contender throughout NBA history is you have to be top 10 in half-court offense and top 10 in half-court defense. Right now, those three teams are the only teams in the NBA that are top 3 in all of those, or top 10 in all of those.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you go back throughout NBA history and you look to see like how consistent that is, it has like a 90% success rate. Like it's very, very, very consistent.
Mm-hmm.
So with OKC, I also think it's probably a little too early to consider them a contender. But Denver and Boston, to me right now, those are kind of the two that I'm like, we've seen enough to know they're legit.
Yeah, I honestly think OKC next year is a yes for me. I think they just need to do 1 year of being a very good team before I'm going all the way to championship. But that's about it.
What did the 2013 Thunder, 2012 Thunder that went to the finals? Had they had any success in the playoffs prior to that? Or did they not go from like 22 wins to 16 wins or some crap like that?
I'm pretty sure they
like
made the conference finals in 2011.
They had like a little coming out party, but I don't know to what extent it was like.
Didn't they lose to the Mavericks in the playoffs in 2011?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was the Dirk run. I believe it was the Western Conference Finals. I could
right.
be wrong.
Yeah. I imagine
you had to go through.
I
it was
see
Portland, the Lakers, and then OKC.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, if that Thunder team runs into anything but the Heatles, they have a very good chance of winning the championship. And I think that this Thunder team is on the same level as that one, personally. Especially if Chet Holmgren's an all-star. J-Dub, let's say that like he makes half a step more progress this season, because like I feel like with J-Dub there's a little bit of plateauing. You know?
So I'm gonna vehemently disagree with you guys there, and I understand if like the vibe you've gotten from watching OKC games is that like he hasn't improved a lot, but in my personal opinion,
Are we talking about
J-Dub?
Gotcha.
I
think he's gotten
improved
better
significantly.
Okay, that's just my casual eye.
I think the 3-point shooting is a little shaky. That's probably the biggest like question mark I'd have with him right now.
I think he's also been there's the occasional player that I feel like I'm cursed whenever I try to watch them live. And Paul George is the big one for me, but he's one of those guys. Every time I tune in, it's when he has a bad game.
I feel that hardcore.
But yeah, I think here's the question. I think Shea, maybe bold take, but I'm just a Kevin Durant hater, so bear that in mind. Shea as good next year as 2012 KD, I think that's plausible. Now the question is, Chet as good as 2012 Russell Westbrook?
I could have seen this like flipped a little bit just for positional sake, but yeah, I get the vibe you're going for.
I'm just talking about best player.
Yeah, like
best player,
the Batman and Robin or whatever, the 1A, 1B, whatever you want to say. I mean, based on how Chet's been so far, I'm kind of at the point now where I can't put a cap on Chet's potential. To me, it's kind of we're just gonna have to see where he tops out at, because it's insane so far.
So real quick before we get into the Q&A, who do we got for the in-season tournament? As a casual, it has not captivated me at all. I'm just like a hater of the courts, most of them anyway. And if the groups had like names and there was just better marketing behind the in-season tournament, I'd be all about it. But as of now, I'm like, I don't know, the Nuggets, they're really good.
My money's on the Kings or the Pacers. I think it's going to be the
Pacers is a sexy pick. I would love to see the Pacers win the in-season tournament. Definitely think it should be.
I want to see that. I want to see that finals matchup. I want a Pacers Kings 7-game series that breaks every scoring record ever put together in the history of this sport.
250 points every single game.
Yeah,
it's been a good trial run for the in-season tournament, but I think next year needs to be a little bit better branding. And although the stakes are there, players definitely want that cash prize. It would be way more interesting to me as a viewer of the game if there is a play-in tournament spot at stake. Like just guarantee a play-in spot. That's very low stakes. Not even a playoff spot, play-in.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 10 seed, I can concede a 10 seed. I think that one's fair.
Yeah, exactly. Just guarantee a play-in spot. But with that, we're going to get into the Q&A of all the people who have given us some money over the stream. Sorry we haven't been able to address you during the stream, but the laptops are already all the way over here, and I'm all the way over here. So there's a gap. Timon, frequent super chatter, appreciate the support. Gave us 7 Canadian smackaroos to say Denver hasn't been fully healthy most of the year and are still the 2 seed. I expect them to be in the Western Conference Finals at minimum. Fellas, I think we agree with this.
Yes.
Yeah. Any hiccups that Denver's having are just that. They're just hiccups. We know what this team is, and they're incredible. If they're healthy, they're going to be a Western Conference Finals favorite.
Let's say Nikola Jokic turns into Draymond Green and kicks someone right in the jewels and is out for a game or two. We still putting them out.
Well, then you can just bring in DJ and Reggie Jackson, and they'll take them all the way.
Forgot all about that. Casey Poole, I believe another frequent chatter. Thank you for your support. Gave us 2 USD. Say if you swap Wemby and Chet, which team improves?
I don't think either improves.
I think the Spurs improve because they're like.
I think if Chet was in San Antonio, I'd have the exact same complaints.
I think Chet would be having the same exact problems Wemby is right now. Wemby, I don't want to sound like a Wemby hater or that like I'm biased towards Chet, like trying to advocate that Chet's. I believe Wemby is going to be the better player long term and have the overall better career. I think that gap has kind of shrunk over the course of the season so far. But also, like, I don't know how much OKC improves with Wemby, any improvements for either team would be marginal at best.
I think they're pretty similar quality of players. One of them is in a winning context and one of them is in a losing context.
Right. And one's 22 years old and the other is 19. So it's like we're comparing guys that are kind of at different stages in their careers, even though they're both rookies.
Yeah.
And then one last question. This one's from me, not chat. Alex, who you got in Survivor this season?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Cut 'em
So
off.
some of my favorites have gotten voted out. But the person I have number one right now is Mama J. I want Mama J to win it all.
I could see Mama J winning it all.
She's played a loyal game and she's played a clean game, like just like surgical in every single decision. And she's also doing the whole, and I believe it's sincere, but she's also doing the whole, I feel bad that I've had to backstab people, which I'm like, that's going to earn you some bonus points with the jury. I promise you that. Yeah. If she can make it to the end, I think she's going to win, because I think the people that she would end up being alongside are going to be so bitter about whatever happens to them that like they'd be like, oh, I want her to win just because she's the one who wasn't awful.
Right. We a fan of Bruce on this podcast, or
I came around on Bruce the last 2 episodes, and then we don't have to say spoilers.
When he was in like the head wrap, like he had his thing on to where it's only his nose and his eyes exposed. They're like doing the super dramatic like lead in to the show. I was like, man, he's about to enter his darkest era.
Yeah.
He did what he did, but tune into Survivor every Wednesday night or Thursday on Paramount Plus.